Long ago, before cities, before machines, before even the idea of fear, there was a perfect place. It was called the Garden of Eden. It was full of beauty, peace, and life. There was no pain, no fear, and no sadness. Everything worked in perfect harmony, and every living thing had its place. This was the very beginning of the human story. In this garden lived the first humans, Adam and Eve. They were not worried about the future. They did not think about danger or survival. They simply lived and enjoyed the world around them. Every day, they walked through the garden, exploring its beauty. They could eat from the trees, drink from the rivers, and rest under the shade. They did not feel stress. They did not feel fear. They trusted the world completely because nothing in it could hurt them. This was life without struggle, life without loss, life exactly as it was meant to be. But in the middle of the garden, there was something different. A tree that stood out from all the others. At first, it looked just as beautiful. Its leaves were full, and its fruit looked perfect. But this tree had a purpose that went beyond beauty. It was not just part of the garden. It was a test, a choice. Everything else in the garden was freely given, but this one thing was not. And that made it special, not because it was better, but because it required a decision. God gave them a simple instruction. They were free to enjoy everything in the garden, every tree, every fruit, every corner of this perfect world. But there was one limit. They were told not to eat from this tree. It was not a complicated rule. It was not hard to remember. In a world full of freedom, there was just one boundary. And sometimes it is exactly those small boundaries that are the hardest to understand, because when everything is given to you, the one thing you cannot have becomes the one thing you start thinking about. One day, something changed. Eve found herself standing closer to the tree than ever before. Maybe it started as a simple thought, a small question in her mind. Why not this tree? She had walked past it many times before. She had seen its fruit again and again, but now she stopped. She looked at it longer, not just as part of the garden, but as something she could choose. Curiosity is quiet at first. It doesn't feel dangerous. It feels like wondering, like thinking. And in that moment, everything still felt calm, but something inside her had already begun to shift. Then, a voice broke the silence. It did not shout. It did not sound dangerous. It sounded calm, almost friendly. Did God really say you can't eat from this tree? The question was simple, but it was powerful, because it made Eve stop and think, not about what she had, but about what she didn't have. Sometimes a question can change everything, not by forcing you, but by making you doubt. And doubt can feel very small at first, but it grows quickly. Eve answered carefully, "We can eat from the other trees, but not this one." She knew the rule. She understood it. But now it felt different. The snake didn't argue loudly. It didn't force her. It simply stayed there and let the thought grow. What if the rule wasn't so important? What if nothing would really happen? The idea slowly changed shape in her mind, from a clear no into a quiet maybe. And sometimes maybe is all it takes. The fruit looked good, better than before, or maybe she was just seeing it differently now. "It will make you wise," the snake said softly. "Not dangerous, not scary, just promising something more." Eve looked at the fruit again. Now it wasn't just a fruit. It was a choice, a step into something unknown. And in that moment, the decision felt closer than ever before. Now, the fruit was in her hand. It felt real, closer than ever. There was still time to stop, still time to let go. Nothing had happened yet, but something inside her was already changing. The question was no longer, "Should I?" It had become, "Why not?" And that is a very different question, because when we start asking, "Why not?" we begin to look for reasons to go forward instead of reasons to stop. And then she made the choice. She took a bite. It was quick, simple, but it changed everything. At first, nothing looked different. The trees were still there, the garden was still around her, but something deeper had already shifted, something invisible but powerful, because some choices don't change the world right away. They change how we see the world. And once that changes, nothing ever feels the same again. Eve was not alone for long. She walked to Adam and gave him the fruit. Adam looked at it, then at her. Something was different. He could feel it even without understanding it. He had a choice too. He could ask questions, he could step back, but instead, he followed. Adam took the fruit and ate it. And in that moment, everything changed. Not just around them, but inside them. For the first time, they felt something new. Something heavy they could not name yet, but could not ignore. Adam and Eve stood close to each other, feeling exposed for the first time. They covered themselves with leaves because now they saw themselves differently. This feeling, this shame, it was something they had never known before, and they didn't know what to do with it. Then they heard something, a sound they once loved, but now feared. Instead of stepping forward, they stepped back. Instead of feeling safe, they felt afraid. So they hid. A voice called out, "Where are you?" It was calm, not angry, but they still stayed hidden, because when we feel guilt, even kindness can feel hard to face. Finally, they stepped forward. Adam said, "We were afraid, so we hid." Fear had never been part of their world before, but now it was real. They understood that something had gone wrong, not just outside, but inside themselves. The garden itself began to change. The colors were not as bright. The air did not feel the same. Something that was once perfect was now broken, not destroyed, but no longer whole. They could not stay, so they began to walk away from everything they had known. They looked back one last time, not just at a place, but at a life they had lost. A life without fear, without pain. The way back was closed, and they continued forward into a world that was no longer perfect. But this is not just a story about loss. Yes, something was lost, something pure, something perfect. But the story does not end there, because even outside the garden, life continued. And even in a broken world, there is still hope. Hope that things can be better. Hope that what was lost may one day be restored in a new way. And maybe the most important question is not just what was lost in the Garden of Eden, but what we choose to do now.